group that had income, could you tell me, what did y'all analyze on that category?
Okay, based upon the, adjustment, the initial adjustment after reading the assessment chart and what it said, the income scale went up from February 1 from 50% to 100%. And then in the next period that a adjustment was made, it, which was August the 1st, it went up again to 100% to 125% of poverty for the family size. So they moved from in crises in February to stable condition in August.
That's correct. And they made movement above that prevention line, so they went from
Yes.
dependence to independence.
And moved to a stable condition.
Yeah, correct. Employment,
Our employment improved the whole time as well. We started out in a vulnerable position with a part-time job and no benefits. And then, by May, they had a full-time job at minimum wage, still no benefits, so they were stable. And by August, they moved up to a full-time job at minimum wage, still no benefits, but now in a safe zone.
that's correct. Also, made movement above the prevention line, indicating independence. Housing,
In February, they were, in crisis, and they did not move up really in May. Isn't that how you read that? Or moved up to vulnerable?
yes.
And then in August, though, they did go on up to stable. So, they did finally move up, it took them a little bit longer.
They stayed invulnerable the first two assessments
Oh, that's okay.
and moved above the prevention line to stable at the last assessment in August. Correct. Okay, education and training,
Stay stable the whole time.
stable the whole time, and we, indicate that as a neutral change, just neutral. The whole assessment, they didn't move up or down. As a group, if we wanna look at transportation, could you tell me where they were on the first assessment, February 1st?
And vulnerable.
Okay, and by the end of the assessment on August the 1st, they
They were safe.
were safe. Okay.
It got called in 6 months, wow.
Child care,
Moved up.
on the first assessment,
They were vulnerable.
okay, their child was on the waiting list, and then by the last assessment, they were
Enrollment.
And safe.
in safe. Okay. So, let's see. I'm gonna make some overall key points of the assessment of that family matrix. The initial assessment on February 1st indicated the client was above prevention line in only one domain, which is education, but by the time, we reached that final assessment, they had moved above the prevention line in really all of them, except for where they had that neutral change in education. In the final, appropriate case management would be first focused on addressing the 5 domains that fell below the prevention line. So when you, on that first assessment on February the 1st, you would, as a case manager, your attention should be focused on the categories where that client fell under the prevention line. It would appear that the full-time employment for this family resulted in a significant increase in income. It would appear that the client has the skills and knowledge to retain employment with the existing skill level. It would appear that the client has the education necessary for employment. Creating additional interventions for education may not be appropriate at this time. Child care moved the furthest, but that could be due to special circumstances related to employer-provided child care or other specific situations that are not identified in the matrix activity. Okay, so y'all did a great job analyzing that matrix. I'm gonna close up module 6 with the key points. An outcome scale is a continuum that describes different states or conditions of a status. Outcome scales are used to measure incremental change. Any movement in a positive direction on the outcome scale is considered movement towards self-sufficiency. even if it's movement from in crisis to vulnerable. There's a significant difference between being placed in vulnerable and stable benchmarks. As we said earlier, that prevention line is the border from dependency and independency. An outcome matrix is a series of scales arranged side by side. An outcome matrix is used to capture a client's progress across more than one program or service. The outcome matrix is introduced to demonstrate how community actions, comprehensive approach to service delivery results in movement towards achievement of self-sufficiency. The outcome matrix also provides a framework for documentation and accountability. In this context, you, the trainer, are also introducing the concept of analyst, a systematic review of the data that allows you to draw conclusions about the client and the agency. And that concludes Module 6.
I know you've been looking to hear 7 since you walked in here this morning. So we're finally at Module 7. And I want you to look on page 95 at our learning objectives. For Module 7, participants will learn how to construct and use a Roma logic model. Participants will identify short, intermediate, and long-term outcomes on logic models and how these relate to scales. Participants will understand how analysis of data in a logic model can lead to improved program management and decision making. And participants will understand how logic models can assist in the targeting process. Participants compare the features of the E model to the traditional model. Okay. Now, we've been looking all morning at the logic model, and we've also been talking about our Roma cycle, and we've gone through assessment, we've gone through planning, we've gone through implementation, we've seen about achievement of results, and now we're at the final stage, which is evaluation, and that would mean that we have made the Roma cycle. Now I'm going to hand you out some some logic models, and we want to see if these match. And I'm just going to ask you to pass so back, please. It should be a set of 3. I hope I got that. I knew I would do that. Okay. Everyone has one. Did everyone get one? I want us to look at these. I'm going to give you a minute or two to look at them. And then we want to remember we were saying today that we, and I want you to turn in your book, so, wait a minute. I want you to turn in your book to page 96. And I want you to remember also, when you're looking at the logic model, that the columns 1 through 5, that's the programmatic side, the program operations, and 6 through 8 is accountability. So we want to know, excuse me, that when you're thinking about your logic model, think in those terms also, that you're talking about the program operation, when you're talking about columns 1 through 5, and you're talking about accountability when you're talking about 6 through 8. Now on the activity that I just handed you, we want to just look at a few so we can kind of exercise what we've done to see whether or not the information match. The information in the columns of the logic model must match. They must be connected in realistic and appropriate ways. You will have to give some samples of I have given you the samples. I want you to decide if the outcome identified meets the stated need. If the service will produce the outcome. The indicator can be measured. The measurement tool will produce evidence, and if appropriate personnel and procedures are identified. So we want to look at the first one that we have there, and we'll go over this one. Families have limited financial literacy. And according to this, the service that, the outcome that they are expecting is what? In column 3.
Increase of financial position in order to qualify for home mortgage.
Okay, now, and what is the service activity? Now, in column 2.
They receive financial advice and counseling.
Okay, now, when you're looking at those, do they match? And looking on across, well, let's look at those first ones according to what the need is, and according to what the service and activities are. Do they match?
They have limited income, they got financial counseling, they've increased their income position to qualify, and they're moving towards the outcome indicator to increase their credit score, and they're attending counseling sessions.
Okay, let's look at column 3 where it says the family increased their financial position in order to qualify for a home mortgage. Now that's the outcome. Does that outcome match what the need says?
Yes.
No, because it doesn't say that they don't have enough money, it just says they don't have enough.
No, they have on that literacy skill.
Okay, so it's not matching, right?
No.
Okay, what about we're looking at the let's read in the next column. We come the outcome, the indicators. We're supposed to be, let's see, 4. Yeah, let me just say too, you notice that column 5 is missing. And why would column 5 be missing? What did we say about column 5? That was the actual results, and we don't have any actual results. Okay, if we look at the second column in 4, when it says 7 of 20, or 35% of the families will increase their credit scores by 10% or more. What about that? We didn't.
It's not really in line with the need that was expressed.
What about the time? It doesn't tell.
It doesn't say what time.
How long they're going to give them to do that. All right, attendance at counseling session, and on the measurement tool, they say attendance at counseling sessions and record of home mortgages. Okay, what about that?
Well, again, them having a home mortgage doesn't really have to do with whether or not they're, financially literate.
Okay, now.
They could have already had a home mortgage before this.
Okay, so the second part of that doesn't match, and the others, this really allow us to measure the increase in the literacy skills, the attendance to counseling sessions. Okay, and we have the data source or collection, and they are using case records. Is it something, in that they say case records? Is it something missing? Who's going to do the work?
Right, and the procedures.
And the procedure, how are they going to do it? They just say case records, they don't say how, or anything, or who, or how. Okay, excuse me, at time of counseling, okay, the frequency is at time of counseling attendance. What about that?
Well, so if they don't show up, you're not even like reporting it or collecting the data, I guess. I don't know, I mean, that doesn't really make sense to me.
Yeah, it does make sense because, I mean, if you were counseling them and they're supposed to come in every 2 weeks or once a month, it's not showing what frequency you're gonna counsel them on getting literacy skills.
Okay, and this is when the service was done, not when the outcome is achieved. So many days following the counseling session, it's not specific enough when you're telling about the frequency and how often and what you are intending to collect there. Okay? All right, now, are you feeling what we're trying to say that you need to include in that? Should we do one other? Out of the other two, choose one you'd like to look at. Families cannot purchase home without assistance, or unemployed individuals do not have skills to qualify for employment. Number three, okay? Let's go with that one. We have the need. Unemployed individuals do not have skills to qualify for employment. And what about service or activities? Someone want to read it for us?
30 clients will receive training in elderly care as part of self-sufficiency program. 10/1/06 through 9/30/07. But you've indicated that you identified the need and you said the service that was going to be provided and when it was going to be provided, when the training was going to be provided.
Okay, when do you put in your time frame? Where does that go?
Over here on the frequency.
The time frame of when you're going to the time frame.
Like the outcome indicator.
It goes with the outcomes. Okay, so it should not be in that column at all. And then the service, doesn't unemployed individuals do not have skills for qualified employment. The service is not matching the need. Okay, let's look at the outcome.
That's not really telling you whether or not they improved their employment skills.
Okay, outcome does not match need. It says that they do not have skills, not that they do not have income. So your need was that they do not have the skills. Okay, and what about your outcome indicators? What about that? Remember, we have to have a what? A length of time. How long are you going to be doing this? What is the time frame? Okay, the measurement tools. Okay, measurement, they seem to be, okay.
Well, the problem I'm having with that outcome indicator is it says they will be employed above minimum wage with benefits for 90 days or more.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much it has nothing to do with not having job skills.
Okay,
It just says that 90 days later, they will get a job, a percentage of them will have a job above minimum wage, which is not what the skill that's needed, which is not what is needed. They want employment skills, not minimum wage jobs.
Okay. All right, there's all of these type things when you're writing your when you're doing your logic model, you have to take all of these things, think of all of these things, because there could be a variety. We said that there could be multiple things that could happen within. So we take that into consideration. What about the data source? Referrals, jobs, interviews, records, placements, and
A lot of that has nothing to do with job skills.
okay. Okay.
The only one that possibly could have any relationship to that would be placement, which
Okay.
would then give them some skills if the employer is providing job training skills.
It doesn't really tell you if their skills are improving. I mean, maybe they could have gotten an unskilled position before, and they could again. That doesn't really tell you if they picked up new skills for employment.
Okay. All right. What about the frequency?
It doesn't give a specific time frame that it's gonna be collected or reported. It just says it should be monitored
Okay.
quarterly. You know, that's not saying that it's done quarterly, it just says it should be.
Okay. So we are learning that things we need to be specific. You need to look at the time frame that you're doing. You need to look first at your need. Then you're going to look at what your outcomes are. You're going to look at what your strategies are in order to meet those needs. And then for the accountability part of it in 6 through 8, and that's a very important part, the accountability part. So you will be making sure that they are, that what you have for the programs that you are writing your logic model for, that they have all those elements in it, and that you are able to do that. Okay, now you're going to have an opportunity to build your own logic model. And this time we're not going to go hypothetical. I want you to kind of come home, and you'll be sitting with your group, and I just pass these if you pass them back. These are just blank logic models, and I just want you to take them. I didn't know whether you want to write in your book or just use a blank one, so I brought some blank ones so you could just use those. And okay, we are on page 97. When you're there, this is building a logic model, and when you're looking at page 97, those are just things that you need to remember. These are things that you need to remember as you're building your logic model. All right, the activity on page 98. Building a logic model, part 1. Well, you have 2 blank logic models in your book, but I've provided you with one, so you can use that one, and you won't have to write the one in your book. Begin building your logic model by considering a program that you know. Identify the program's name and the program mission statement. Enter these on the logic model template. Start on the left side of the logic model template. Identify the need in column 1. In column 2, identify the specific service. Okay, right? Okay. All right, now, before you do this, I want you to, the hypothetical part of it is that your board and your staff and everybody who needs to come together you've done your needs assessment, you've done everything that we talked about this morning that you have to do prior to writing your logic model. I want you to pretend, that's the pretend part, that all of that has been done already and you have your results. And now you're going to put your logic model together, all right? And I want you to, all right, you will be building your logic model and we will take some number of time and I will tell you when your time is up. But for right now, I want you to get together and think about your logic model and take a program that you work with and see if you can build your logic model from that. And remember, when you're doing it, you're going to put in, you know, the organization, the program. You're going to check whether it's a family need or an agency or a community need. And don't forget to put your mission statement down here. And we will try to avoid doing proxy. Now the mission is, you know, whatever program you're doing, you're going to write up what that is, that mission is for that program. You know, when you're thinking about whatever it is that you do, you think about what that mission is for that program. You know, when you think about whatever it is that you do. I was trying to think of something that didn't that didn't pertain directly to you, that you said, okay. Okay. Go over all of this, but this is a tool for you to use when you are writing your logic models, and you can use this as a self-assessment. You can look at what's on this list, and you can determine whether or not you have done everything that you have everything in your logic model that you need to have in it. So as you did anybody have any questions about their logic model or building their logic model? Where did you feel comfortable in doing that?
We're still not sure about the last two boxes.
Okay, and the data source and the frequency. Now remember, you're going to look at whatever it is. Let's look at your model. What was it?
We used John 3:16 that we worked with down in Hurtsboro.
Okay, what was your need?
Assisting families in need for food, clothing, and utilities.
Okay, now if you your strategy, what did you want your outcome to be? In the third
They
column.
received the food, clothing, and health paying utilities.
Okay, now what would you use to verify the fact that they did receive the food and the clothing and all? How would you verify that? If you were looking for something to verify it, how would you verify it? If they got what, clothing, you say?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what would you do? Would you, if they went to John 3:16 to get something, do they have to maybe sign in, or they have to do something to show that they were there and they received the service?
Yeah, I think they have to take like their food stamp or something that would show that.
But what does John 3:16 do something to document the fact that they were there?
Yeah.
That it was received, the service was received. All right, so if you were, one of the measurement tools that you could use was the fact that the documentation from John 3, you might have, even if you did a referral, because I think you said one of your ways of doing it was through a referral, then if you sent a referral letter with your parent to say, or your client to say, take this to them, and then have them to sign off on the referral letter, you can document the fact that they received the service.
Okay.
And that's the kind of thing that you're talking about. You want to get, when you're talking about measuring to see whether or not something really happened, you want to have something concrete, something that you could put your hands on, that measures whether or not the service that you had said to be done was actually done. You know, just like in one of the things that we said earlier, they were talking about sign in and sign out sheets. You know, to prove that the person had been, that was going to be one of the things they used to prove that they had been involved. And it's the same type thing. And then when it comes down to the frequency of it, then in this case, we hope that they for frequency, that you're going to say, okay, I'm going to follow up on that. When you were putting down in one of those columns, how often you were going to look at that. So you're going to follow up on that. If you say you visit your parents every week, then your frequency might be a lot different from a social worker who works with parents, and on a broader scale, But if you're going there every week, you say, you would check on a weekly basis, But they shouldn't need, this particular thing. You look at what the need is and determine then the frequency of it, because in this case it's like you hope you have a one-time thing that the problem is taken care of, sort of, in that, but in a weekly thing would do. There might be some other things that you say that you're working with this family on that takes time to do. So you might say you'll check it once a month or something like that. But it really depends upon the need and the outcome that you're expecting to receive. Okay? Okay. Any other questions? Okay. All right. After you create a logic model, how will you use it? Now that we are familiar with the format of the logic model, we'll move to the discussion of the contents contained in the logic model and how you use it. And if you will, okay, the next page is using, on page 103, using the logic model to assess the outcomes. And in your manual, you also have this, but we put one up on the board. I know you can't see this one as well, but you do have one in the manual on page 104. Make sure, yes. On page 104, you have a logic model, and it's emergency housing. Okay, and if we were looking at this logic model about emergency housing, what do we see is the need that we have here? Families are at risk. Do you see that? Families are at risk of being evicted. You see that? Okay. All right. Now, and you see, and when we're looking across, you look at the area, and we're not going to read through every one of these cells that we have here. But, okay. Okay. Now, the one thing that we did not talk about was column 5. You remember we said that that was the outcome. So when we look at this and we think of how many families that we expected, there are 2 points that are here that comes out of column 5. The agency followed up afterward. Now you see, when you look at what they expected to do, and your expected outcomes are the tools that they were going to use, your indicators was 150 of 150, or 100% of the families will remain in their residence 30 days. Okay, when you look at the actual outcome that actually happened when you're in column 5, and I was down below, I was down there where it read families are at risk, and I read across. Okay, when they actually did the outcomes of it, it reads there that 142 of the 155, or 92% of the families remained in their home for 30 days. And then they also realized that 132 of 155, or 85% of the families remained in their house, their residence, for 60 days. And then 90 of 155, of 58% of the families remained in their house for 90 days. Okay. From that, there were things that the agency looked at what their outcomes were. They had expected all of them to stay in their house for 90 days. But then, when they realized, when they went back and followed up on it, they realized that only 90 of the 155, or 58% of the families, remained in their house for 90 days. Okay, what questions do you have about the performance? What would you do if you had these questions? The agency found that the emergency shelter service, actual results appear to be close to the projection. So in the beginning, when they first looked at it, what they thought would happen, with the number that they said that they were going to serve, it was close to what they had projected. But as they followed along and they went down and looked at it over 90 days, they found that there was at 90 days, families increasingly lost their housing. So it became up to 58%. What you have when you look at it like this is called a descriptive analysis of a program effectiveness using the logic scale. So what they did was they had their projections, they had the number of people that they were going to do, and then after the time frame, they looked at it over time and they reevaluated what was happening with that family. Okay, after they reevaluated what was happening with the family, okay, if you turn the page to 106. Okay, you will now introduce, okay, after reevaluating, and they went through, they looked at the program itself, and then after the evaluation, they decided that, okay, the question that was asked is, did the intervention have the desired result? And the result was that the person would not be evicted from their home. So now, the answer, as we now know, is that the intervention or service was less effective than originally expected. So when they first started off, they thought that giving a 1-month emergency rent payment would be fine for these people. But then after they went and they evaluated it, they realized that that wasn't efficient. So it didn't net the results that they had expected. We know that this as a result of follow-up and analysis of data. Okay. All right, now when they went back and after they looked at the program and everything, this is the same need and everything that they stated in the beginning, but you note that instead of in the beginning, it was called emergency housing. When you look at the first one you did, it was called emergency housing. After they evaluated what had happened, they realized that it needed to be more than that. So they even had a name change, and it went from emergency housing to housing assistance, because they realized that it wasn't doing what they wanted to. They expanded the mission, and it went from to ensure that all families have access to safe, clean shelter, they changed, and it went from that to ensure that all families have access to safe, clean shelter, and to help families obtain safe, affordable, permanent housing. And now, if you compare the two, this section here remained the same. This shaded section is the same as what we had over on the first one. However, now this has been labeled as short-term. So this same thing that they thought was going to happen with people, they put that as short-term. And then now they have, as a result of expanding the needs statement, the agency expanded the logic model to include intermediate term and long term. Okay, when they moved to transitional public unsubsidized and home ownership intervention, that's when they went to the intermediate one. And then if housing services are expanded, then housing outcomes would similarly expand. So columns 4 and 5 in the is immediate and long term. Okay. All right, so what we're saying with this is that you can use your logic model to look at what you're doing with families. But then when you, after you look at what you're doing with them, then you can reevaluate. And if need be, you can go from a complete change, from even a name change of what you were planning to do, and you can expand it. And you can also add levels to it. It could be a short-term, this is a short-term goal, this is a long-term goal, this is an intermediate goal. So we want you to look at it in that manner. And also, when you're looking at, I want you to turn also to page 108, because the logic model, you know, we looked at just a moment ago, we were looking at the scale, and a logic model can then be transformed into the scale. Now you say, what's the difference between using the logic model and using the scale? The logic model is the long-term objective of it. The scale shows you the incremental changes. So you will use both of them so that you could look at what you have planned over time for them to do. And when you look at the scale, when you look at them as in crisis, vulnerable, and all that, you're looking at those little steps, because sometimes it's those little steps that show that a family has increased and they're coming from and going into self-sufficiency. Okay, now we want to make sure that from your logic model, you can set the targets that you have for your parents, for your clients. You can set the targets that you have for them. And the information on setting targets is on page 109. And there's an example on page 110 that tells you about an example of setting targets for your parents, your clients. And that's when you're putting your percentages and all of those to it, and you're seeing where the number of people that you recruited, the number of them that have succeeded and have they're moving into self-sufficiency. All right. Now, there is an electronic e-logic model that is located in online, and the information about that is on page 111, and it goes all the way over to 114. So if you 100 and goes all the way
Yeah,
over.
it's 140.
Oh, 115, yeah, all the way over. So then, if you're interested, you can sign in and just look at that. And on the e-logic model, you plug in certain information and it sort of fills it out for you and all of that. But that's something that you can look into. Okay. The key points, the summary for this session. Excuse me. The logic model is our most important tool for agencies and programs accountability. The logic model is being used by many federal, state, and local funding sources as a condition for funding. The logic model can be used to support planning, monitoring, evaluation, and other management functions of the CAA. The logic model links program operation, when that's columns 1 through 5, and program accountability, which is columns 6 through 8. Development of a logic model will take thinking and time. It is not designed to be perfect, but representative of a program service. Use the logic model checklist to self-evaluate preparation of initial logic models. The logic model can be used both to plan and monitor implementation. The logic model can also be used to evaluate performance through a comparison of column 4, which is planning, or projected outcomes, with column 5, the actual outcomes. Aggregating data in the logic model will provide a means to establish realistic targets and performance measures. The logic model can serve as an executive summary of a program or service. CAA developing a catalog of logic models has a useful marketing and accountability tool for their board, members of the community, elected officials, and funders. Using electronic technology, the data generated by a logic model can be collected and analyzed easily. And that's when the e-logic model is an electronic or software-driven adaptation of the logic model and supports a database of information gathering about needs, services, outcomes, and agency performance. All right. Well, we have gone through our 7 modules, and now the team will come together for our closing.
Okay, we're gonna close out today. I'm on page 117, the learning objectives for the closing. Our participants recognize that they need to devise a plan to help their agency, state system, and the CSBG network implement ROMA. And the 10 questions are an example of a pre-post measure of increased knowledge of ROMA. If you flip over to page 118, these are just some list of tips that will help you consider what you need to do to implement the principles that you learned today about ROMA. On page 119, this is Page 119 is a list of the next steps you need to take to implement Roma in your agency. Recognize the nature of the Roma process and how it affects all aspects of the management of your community action, future funding, and relationships to funders. Recognize the focus is on the outcomes and performance in addition to activities or outputs. Identify and collect appropriate and relevant needs assessment and outcome data. Recognize the need to gather and report on different data sets for various funders. Train staff and board in Roma practices. Page 120. This page is from Reinventing Government by Arthur David Osborne and Ted Gabler, which was published in 1992. What get measures get done. If you do not measure results, you cannot tell success from failure. If you cannot see success, you cannot reward it. If you cannot reward success, you are probably rewarding failure. If you cannot see success, you cannot learn from it. If you cannot recognize failure, you cannot correct it. If you can demonstrate results, you can win public support. And we're going to go back over the 10 questions that you had received when you first came in this morning. And just compare, I think some of you answered the 10 questions, and just see how you gained knowledge since then of Roma, and if your answers have changed or are different now that we're at the end of the session. Okay, number 1, true or false? Community action agencies most effectively evaluate their results by focusing on the activities supported exclusively by CSBG.
False.
That is false. Number 2, CSBG funds are a dedicated funding stream to support the work of community action.
True.
It's true. Number 3, Roma is the term for the required reporting of data to a state and federal government.
True.
That is false. So Roma is results-oriented management and accountability. Okay. Number 4, community actions are expected to focus on moving individuals and families to self-sufficiency and on the community transformation in addition to providing services to low-income people. Correct. Number 5, CAA programs are designed so that clients who participate in their services achieve measurable results. All right. Analysis of the agency's results can be used to identify effectiveness and performance of the agency. Okay. The use of results instead of services may reduce the agency's competitiveness and marketability because of low numbers of results reported. Okay. Community action agencies select services to offer based on available funding, not necessarily on the identified community needs. Roma is the community action term for a range of agency operation and administrative activities in addition to reporting. Okay. Implementing Roma in your community action will affect the planning and fiscal functions, but will not affect the way your programs and services are delivered.
False.
So do you see the difference from when you answered the questions this morning and when you answered them? We have some evaluations, if you could just fill them out and leave them on the table on your way out.
That concludes our training for today. And first of all, we want to thank you for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to come and be with us today. And we really hope that this has been a help to you. And we are available at any time when you like. If you need to call upon us, we will be there to answer your call.
Thank you.